the NCURA banned sole source and the no-cost extensions. They would treat us with some delightful and funky music with their research administrative themes at the national conferences. And I know that every now and then they reunite and play. Well, today we have an amazing new artist on the scene who will perform. Give a round of applause for DJ Total Cost Tracy, who will entertain us indirectly.
Now, this is a session all about audits, how your life gets flipped and turned upside down. So we'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. We'll have a conversation, how best to prepare. In uniform guidance is where this is born. It applies to us all, domestic and foreign. Policy, accounting, covers the whole school. Procedures being followed, it's the golden rule. When equipment tags and a spending spree started trouble at a university, they got one little finding and the agency said, "You're paying us back for all the people you fed." A consultant was called, and when they came near, they took one look at effort and sighed, "Oh dear, if anything is certain, this isn't rare." But we still thought, wow, it's so unfair. Reaching the limit, too much on our plate, repeatedly saying, "Stop submitting it late." We look to our colleagues who are already there, encourage the source of the wisdom to share.
All right, give a hand for DJ Total Cost Tracy. Okay, so I'd like to begin by introducing myself. My name is Lisa Allen. I'm the Associate Director for Research Advancement here at the College of Health Solutions at Arizona State University. I've been here at the college for 6 years, and I have nearly 20 years in research administration. I have oversight over this award.
And I'm Tracy Gatlin, and probably panicking now because of my now infamous that I put out there recorded. I am an assistant director of the Office of Research Development at Montana State University, and I also have a little over 10 years of research administration experience. So welcome today. All right, first I want to make sure that everybody's on board. Today's not an in-depth training about audits. We're really just hitting an overview and an introduction of the topic, and we're going to go over some interactive scenarios and just talk about how to make audits less stressful overall. So on that topic, we have some specific agenda objectives that we're aiming for. And one, we want to just give some introductions that help introduce you to an audit and be able to differentiate maybe some sound practices where there's audit findings versus not. And we really tried to take this topic that is maybe not what you would describe as fun and make it as positive and as fun as we possibly could today to help just give you a lighthearted training on a topic that you might not otherwise associate with, and that you come out of this also getting some experience with those uniform guidance rules that apply to audit issues. So we'll have some polls for you to participate in, and we'll have questions at the end, but it's really our goal to help have everybody engaged as possible. Feel free to use the chat liberally today.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so why this presentation? I can remember being a very new RA in a very large institution in a department and fairly isolated. And all of the trainings really dove into the very specific rules and policies. And I had no connection to what it meant to be connected to an audit, nor did I really see it. So we wanted to highlight that audits can be confusing. There's different types of audits. There are different layers of rules that apply and don't, or altogether they do apply cumulatively. It can be scary when all you hear are the warnings, those institutions that we might all be able to think of that they have the multi-million-dollar fines, and you don't want to be responsible for that. And also that talk about different size of institutions can be how close you are to really being familiar with or having close proximity to the audit process. So unless you've had that experience, it might feel a little mysterious.
Yeah, a big part of this is really taking away some of the fear and anxiety surrounding the audit process, because in most cases, every task that we do on a day-to-day basis is preparing us for those events.
So we'll start off with some types of audits. Just generally, we talked about that there's different types. And so you may be familiar if your institution has an institution-wide audit that's required out of uniform guidance, or maybe you've had something of a program or a departmental level internal audit. And then there's also the agency audits. And maybe it's a review audit, a desk audit, sometimes it's called, or the Office of the Inspector General. But one point I wanted to make is that just because there is an audit doesn't mean somebody's left in the anonymous tip that something's gone wrong. Some of these can be proactive and preemptive and not necessarily reactionary.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the audit process. And this is really just a scenario of how a possible audit could go. It could go in this linear, fashion, or it could be variation thereof. But typically, I want to start out by saying that the internal controls and processes and protocols that you have in place at your institutions are going to drive the success of the audit. So if the internal controls are tight and they're being followed, you're looking at transactions, that you're doing everybody's doing their tasks on a daily basis in accordance with those guidance, you're going to be in good shape. So internal controls need to be in place and according to uniform guidance, of course. There's going to be institution level policies and procedures that fall in line with that. Typically, there will be some form of audit notification. If it's internal, obviously, it could be an email, it could be a phone call. If it's external, there may be a formal notification, message, letter that goes out to the institution in preparation for that, which outlines what that process will look like. I think the most important thing that you want to do before you even get your hairs up is to verify the validity of that request. Is the source, in this day and age, we have so many people that's out there just trying to scam and get information that we want to make sure we're verifying that the notification is authentic. If in fact that is, there's typically going to be some type of preparation for an interest meeting of some sort. That might be at your institution. That might be in this day and age, it could be a Zoom meeting. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to take place for each individual, but you'll probably get some formal announcement as to what that process looks like. So maybe an interest meeting. Then during the actual audit itself, there may be interviews that happen. The sponsors or the entities that's coming out to inspect, they're looking at this as field work. They're going to come out to the institution. They're going to look at expenditures, ask questions. They may want to have further documentation, but this may be an on-site meeting that happens, and they're going to gather that information. At some point, there's going to be an exit interview where you talk about the results of that information gathering, documentation phase with the auditing entity. And then there will be a discussion of any follow-up activities that are required. Typically, there's going to be some type of reporting that comes out of that. What are corrective actions that we need to take to make sure that we're in compliance moving forward if there were findings, and also be mindful of any type of retention period for records and documentation related to that audit. So with that said, I also want to talk about some of the consequences or negative effects or aspects of audit. What could happen? Obviously, some of you may have heard about some of the large institutions that receive, $1 million fines for, expenditures that weren't allowable on grants, those types of things. Well, there could be fines and penalties, increased monitoring of expenditures, of activities, of functions, of the actual funding that is given to the organization, loss of expanded authority. maybe now with after the audit, because there were so many findings of some sort, there's now we have to request approval of even higher thresholds when it comes to expenditures. So, that might be something you need to be mindful of. We often hear of funding being reduced or restricted. Sponsors no longer have confidence, that those funds are going to be managed appropriately. So they may not even want to fund it, the individual or the institution. And we've had situations where during the course of my career, I've heard at my institution, at various institutions of the PIs issues or negligence or what have you impacting the whole institution or what have you. So damage to the reputation of the principal investigator or project personnel, and also damage a reputation to the institution. There could be suspension, disbarment, or exclusion for the individual or institution from that sponsor's assets, funds. On the flip side of that, what are the positive consequences? Obviously, there are some that's out there. Learning process, particularly for newer research administrators, going through that process, whether it be internal audit, external audit, what have you, it's a learning process. So take that for what it is. Typically, again, it's not an indictment of that person that's helping gather this information. As long as you've been doing your job and doing it succinctly and efficiently, you should be in good shape. But learn from that process. Think about building relationships with the auditors that's coming out, getting to know them. It doesn't hurt to try to build some rapport. That way you may get either tips or resources that you didn't know that were available to you. It'll help you ensure quality moving forward. Going through that process, you can think about some things that we might need to change to ensure that we don't have these types of findings. What are some lessons learned, if you will, from that experience? Improving your reputation. How you respond to an audit can be very helpful in terms of improving the reputation of the organization. If you're organized and get the information back to them succinctly, efficiently, and ensure that it's comprehensive and that it's addressing all of the concerns that they have expressed, then you could actually make yourself look much better in the eyes of the sponsor or the auditing entity. And also, you're going to expand your network. If at all else fails, and they find some major findings, then maybe you go work for them someday. So at the end of the day, we want to just make sure that you understand that there is so many different positive aspects to auditing as well. Okay. So with that being said, we're going to have a little comic relief here. And I always say that, we have very stressful jobs as research administrators. And sometimes you might feel like crying. There may be days where like, what is going on here? I want to go check out for the day and go get Airbnb, go to, Sedona. I just did that this past week, as a matter of fact. But anyway, so I have a joke for you. What do you call an auditor who has superpowers? You would never call that person. That's a joke. Don't ever call that person, because they might actually get more audit findings than you can put your hands on. So either you're laughing or you're crying on that joke. Either way, at the end of the day, it's all about having a good time, right?
All right. So now's the part where we're going to go through some sample scenarios, and it is primarily looking at what not to do. And if any good comedy show that you've been to, they typically have audience participation. So it's time for that. We're going to have a few scenarios that are pulled from the real Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General. And we're going to talk through those findings, discuss the issues and the regulations that are relevant. But we're also hoping that you will use the chat here, and we'll have some polls for you to decide what you think the problem is. All right, so first up is an NIH scenario about salary and effort reporting. In this scenario, a university requires time and effort reporting to be completed and certified every 6 months. However, the university's policy didn't specify how soon after the reporting period ended that an employee must certify their time and effort reports. As well, a university effort report was certified effort report was certified 5 months after the effort reporting period, so May, for giving this scenario. The individual's effort was reported to NIH as part of their annual research performance progress report, or RPPR, in October for the grant period that ended in July. So in this scenario, there was the effort report on the NIH progress report did not match the university's effort report certification. So think about channel your best Taylor Swift, right? Of I'm the problem, it's me. Where do you see that problem? And we'll go to the next slide. And I've got the link there if you have interest in reading the full report that this came from. But Lisa's going to send us to, we're going to go to the next slide, and there's a poll.
Okay.
And we want you to use your chat, find the emojis, because we thought that'd be a little bit more fun, of what you think was the problem out of that scenario. So I'll read those to anybody that's just listening along. Somebody didn't synchronize their watch. The effort report wasn't submitted at the same time as the RPPR. There's nothing to see here. Are you sure there's even a problem? I thought you did it. No, I thought you were supposed to do it. So it's just like checking your coffee pot, and somebody needs to confirm that there's accurate reporting, and that didn't happen here. So give us your emoji in the chat, which item you think is a problem.
And you can find the emoji, or you can use the ABC.
ABC, as well. We're going to be pretty free form here.
Whatever is easiest for you. Ooh, somebody found the clock. I'll leave it. I like the creativity here. We got some.
Okay. Lisa and I had fun coming up with these polls. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Whether or not anybody else thinks we're funny, we have fun. All right, we'll go to the answer. We'll go to the next slide. Not necessarily the answer, but we'll go to the discussion part. So, the finding that NIH had with this was that the effort reported to NIH did not match the effort at the university. There are a variety of uniform guidance, the code of regulation items on the right-hand side that are all about having internal controls, financial reporting, monitoring, reporting, performance. Those are pulled directly from that audit report of citing for their findings. But what I wanted to highlight in this scenario is that this, and it's stated right there in the quote, that it's a inadequate controls. It's a university process that was the problem. It wasn't that somebody made a mistake. Well, somebody may have made a mistake here, but the finding is about the processes in a university setting, and that they weren't there to safeguard that the effort was reported different within the university and out to the agency. So that's just something I wanted to make sure is noted.
The internal controls are so key, because obviously, from guidance requests that we have those in place at the institutional level. And lots of times they're going to come in and look and see, well, what are the internal controls? And are you adhering to your own internal controls? If you're not, then that could be a finding, because what's the point of having it in the first place if you're not going to follow it? So that's going to be a biggie.
And on our poll, that was item C. It was that somebody didn't check, right? Somebody wasn't looking at whether the effort that went out to NIH was the same as the internal. So if you answered item C, or I think it, I don't even remember what emoji I indicated to list there. I think it was the big, like, didn't check, no entry. Okay, we can go on to the next scenario.
All right.
So next is another NIH item, and it's all about travel. So here, an employee's travel authorization showed they're going to a conference. They're going to stay 2 nights for a 3-day conference. There had flight reservations that had them arriving on the first day and leaving on the last day of the conference. And they also booked a hotel to stay at the hotel for 3 nights of the conference. The individual ended up only staying 2 nights and returned to the university on the 3rd day. The full airfare was charged to the NIH award, as was the cost of 3 nights of hotel at the university. Fun fact, this is actually from that same effort report. Gosh, I'm on it. It's the same audit report as that prior talk audit. NIH
all that
effort.
singing got your voice messed
right,
up.
I know. It has me all flustered. So anyway, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to have a poll of where you think the problem is. So what happened? If you're like me, you always check the receipt at the grocery store. Well, NIH does that same exact thing, and spoiler alert, they are not paying for the extra night at the hotel. B, what does travel have to do with research? Or C, just like not using another person's Netflix, thou shalt not travel outside the days of the conference. So let us know which item in the chat. You're doing great. Everybody is such good listeners.
Go to the chat, everybody.
It's moving. People are on it.
Let's see.
Maybe this was too easy for everyone. Let's go ahead and go to the findings page.
Oops, sorry.
That's right. All right. So again, the finding had to do with Code of Federal Regulations, internal controls, and factors affecting allowability of cost. What's on that screen, this is a direct quote from that report. The university officials indicated they were not aware of the error until the audit, and they agreed that the 3rd night of the hotel should not have been charged the award. So all of you, I saw a lot of A's and a lot of dollar signs and money symbols. So you know that that was the issue. And again, this is just an opportunity to point out that it's not necessarily that, yes, mistakes were made. It's pointing to the process of the university not in place to catch those errors. So again, it's knowing the policies and procedures, but it's also making sure that the institution has the correct policies and procedures in place to catch these items.
Mm-hmm. And obviously the travel policies would be part of internal controls for something like this. So if they're not, you know, following that, then again, we're back to being out of compliance with their own internal control situations and policies. Okay. Okay, I have a scenario. And I didn't put any fun like questions at the end, so this is going to be a little drier. But I think everybody's using their own sense of humor in this chat, which I love. So you can use your own emojis and basically designate it's going to be indirect cost, invoice payment, or deliverables. So in this case, is related to sub-recipient monitoring. The lead institution is requesting that all sub-recipients either cost share the F&A or use the de minimis indirect cost rate of 10%. The subrecipient decides to include their negotiated F&A rate instead. So now we come to the invoice payment. The PI has confirmed that all deliverables have been received. The invoice contains the following information and was subsequently paid. It has the current and cumulative costs, date of service, signature of the subrecipient administrator, evidence of PI approval, and approval of the sponsor manager, program managers. Regarding the deliverables, the subrecipient PI sent the required data and final report to the lead PI today because he is starting sabbatical in Tracy, where he will not have Wi-Fi access or any means of communication for a year. The sub's final invoice was paid 2 months ago in anticipation of this event. What is the issue? Go ahead and put in the chat. You can put A, B, or C for indirect based on the column, or you can specify. Yes. Okay. So I see a lot of feedback there. Okay, we're going to go on to the answer. Okay, the finding. All pass-through entities must monitor the activities of the subrecipients as necessary to ensure that the subaward is used for authorized purposes in compliance with the federal statutes, regulation, the terms and conditions of the subaward, and that subaward performance goals are achieved, reviewing financial and performance reports required by the pass-through entity. I saw a lot of feedback about the payment prior to deliverables, paid the invoice first. All those that's right on track, because basically the fact that the PI the subrecipient PI was inaccessible has nothing to do with the scope of work that is required to complete this project. For that person's convenience, the invoices were paid prematurely. The project has a whole year to completion, so that's going to possibly confound even the project in and of itself. So if you answered that the payments were made prematurely, that's what the finding held. And that monitoring must happen for the subrecipients so that you're getting all the deliverables required as specified in their subrecipient agreement. Okay. And now we're going on to another scenario. Recharge center services. Oh, and for before, people asked about the indirect cost rate. Well, I've had oftentimes where other institutions want to force their indirect rate onto our institution, basically because they were trying to keep costs down, those types of things. But if we have a federally approved indirect rate and there's no restrictions other than the sponsor, the direct sponsor saying, hey, we want you not to accept all of your indirect rate and basically cost share it, that's not appropriate. So that wouldn't have been the problem there. It's totally fine to include the federally approved indirect rate when and if at all possible for that recovery.
So maybe now's a good time to just remind everybody that there may be more than one issue in these scenarios, but we were highlighting kind of what we saw as the primary issue when we read through the finding report.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Recharge center services, budgeting. The recharge center is including some of their personnel in the budget based on their effort and others based on their approved rate. All the personnel have been captured in the approved rate formulas and will be providing services quoted in the charge-out rates. So in relation to the cost transfers, internal charge-out costs were transferred to the grant with a detailed explanation and within the 90 days of the original transaction date. And then, sorry. I was trying to move you all over the way so I could see because you're in my way. Move over, get out the way, get out the way. Okay, invoices. An internal charge-out rate invoice has been approved and paid with the following details. Okay, what is the issue here? Go ahead and start chiming in the chat. We should have that clock that, what is that? Do, 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 do.
I was just thinking we needed music.
What is that show? I forgot what it is.
Jeopardy.
Oh, Jeopardy. Okay, that's right. Okay.
I received a question in the chat. Can you explain for people that are new to recharge centers what a charge out rate is?
Yes. Okay. So basically, there may be entities within the university structure where they're basically trying to be self-sustaining centers. So they're on this like soft money status or what have you. So what they do is within the university, there's typically the controller's office that is involved with helping that team, that group to create established charge-out rates, looking at the cost that's involved with maintaining that center to full efficiency. So they develop those rates. They plug the personnel time in there, any supplies, any equipment. They come up with a formula and come up with like an hourly rate for each individual personnel that's associated with that center or that the service area. I think that's kind of gives you an idea. So a recharge center is one that's trying to basically be self-sustaining and recover their cost. So they are billed out. Does that help? Okay, double dipping cannot charge the recharge center rate, include the personnel, inconsistent treatment of charging or cost, budget on based on the approved rate and not effort. Thank you. Okay. You're right on target. The cost of services. Let me just move you over here without messing up. The cost of services when material must be charged directly to the applicable awards based on actual usages of the services basis of the schedule rates or established methodology that includes, does not discriminate between activities under the federal award or other activities of non-federal entities, including usage of the non-federal entity for internal purposes, and is designed to recover only the aggregate cost of the services. The cost of each service must be consistent normally for both direct and its allocable share of indirect costs. So basically, they should only budget their approved charge-out rates. They should not be budgeting effort for those personnel. Now, there is some exceptions, and I'll give you a scenario. If the person was included in the charge-out rates at, say, 50% of their position or appointment, then it's possible that the other 50%, maybe they have another position, you know, within a university or something like that, or maybe they're in a different area or what have you, and that percent of their time is not included in that charge-out rate, then it may be possible to have that charge onto the grant if it's completely and specifically delineated which goes to which. But under normal circumstances, typically recharge personnel are on the grant, on the included in whole on the in the formula. So we have that come up a lot. So we want to make sure we highlighted that. So any questions? If you have questions, save them for the end. We'll go back to it, okay? I like that chat is working.
All right, so we also reached out to people that handle audits a lot. And this is just a sample of some of the things that we found bubbled up as frequent recommendations. So out of those scenarios or others that we haven't mentioned, here are just a few items that we think are helpful to know. The first is just be mindful of your documentation and the record retention. You know, maybe I've been watching too many shows about lawyers, but a paper trail can be good and it can really document what you've done and why. And so thinking about those things as you're working through the items that you're touching. Secondly, to know or learn the policies that intersect with your work, the institutional, the sponsor, and federal levels. I actually had a point I wanted to make here that I think studying for the CFR, when I started to really learn the CRA, the CFRs is when I started to learn them, and I felt much more comfortable dealing with audit situations that cross-made us. We also wanted to highlight that talking, if you're in a role that you have to talk to an auditor, that can be pretty intimidating, but to make sure that you're answering honestly, there's tactics about having some silence that you may just have to be familiar with, or the recommendation to also just have another person join in the meeting, so you're not the only one listening to those questions and answering. And then following the established procedures and how important that is, that audit findings can be because of procedures not being followed, in addition to some of the scenarios we had where the actual policies and procedures weren't catching the issues. So there's both. My take-home point that's bolded is ask questions. Ask questions of other people, ask questions of what you're seeing, and don't assume that somebody else is checking at a higher level.
Go ahead. Oh, and we can also be our own experts to a certain degree, because you know, I look at it over the course of my career, like, you know, if that were my money, if I was shelling it out, how would I look at it? How would I treat it? you know, even beginning to look at expenses. Obviously, we're trained that, you know, is it allocable, reasonable, allowable? Those are consistently treated. As long as we're really following our, again, our internal controls and those requirements, we're going to be in good shape. And then we talked about the newspaper test, you know. I like that when you brought that up, Tracy.
Yeah, I always think about, do I want to read about what my decision was in the newspaper? And the answer is typically no, I do not. Because, you know, most of the time it's covering something maybe doesn't. It's hot news, right? So you don't see that.
Yeah.
And
if
I
win
think it's
lottery, I don't mind being in a newspaper, but well, no, I do. I'm going to be very honest with that. You guys, if anybody's played, it's pretty high right now. But you won't see me at the next presentation if that be the case. Sorry.
But nobody likes being under a microscope, right? This is hard.
Yeah.
But it's small things like documenting human subject payment incentives, having those receipts on hand. And those are like easy things to miss. So we can keep moving on from here because I think we're timing.
Yeah.
Got a little bit to get through.
So, yeah, we do got a little bit to get through here. So I wanted to talk about the fact that we all really need to give ourselves a hand, a pat on the back, all the cutting edge research that we're actually a part of, that we're helping to get out into the global community. It's important that we support our principal investigators as they do their great research work. With that being said, I want to talk about the pain in the accounting audit. If you thought I was going to say something else, then that's entirely on you. But we're going to talk about pain in the accounting audit, and I'm going to give you some scenarios, okay? All right. So we have another scenario. A PI and a co-PI asked for indirect costs to be waived on an industry proposal with a budget of $450,000 direct costs per year for 5 years. There's 5 potential subcontracts and 5 consultants on this proposal. How do you respond to this request? This is going back to how are you looking at these expenditures that's going to eventually help you down the line when it comes to auditing. That's a negative, Captain.
We've got some great options for you for your actions.
Deny, why? Okay.
So yeah, go to the next slide to show your options.
Here are the options. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I forgot to do the options. Here's the options. Okay. A, give a colossal side eye and continue to eat your toasted peanut butter and jelly sandwich before it gets colder. B, tell them that we can do that if your parents will write a check for the indirect costs. Say, what you talking about, Willis? Or D, inform them that we must treat all sponsors similarly and indirect costs must be recovered whenever possible while laughing under your breath. Which one are you gonna go with?
I like all of the above.
I love all the above too.
All right.
Yes.
We got one more scenario for you.
Yeah, we got one more scenario for you. You guys are right. If you selected D or all of the above, you're right on track. We're good. Okay. Here's another one. The project is about to end, and you learn that the PI has approved all subcontractor invoices, but has not received one progress report to support expenditures. What do you do? A, you put in your request for a 1-month vacation to Fiji. B, you would email the subrecipient a sad face emoji. C, you would meet with the PI to remind the responsibility and determine a strategy to get their reporting in hand. And D, you would put the subcontractor agreement to fire and use it to light your lavender scented yaking candle. See him bring a big stick. Okay. All right. Obviously, it's going to be C. Obviously, they should have had all this in hand to begin with. You know, we shouldn't even be in this at this stage where we're like now trying to signed progress reports and they've approved all the subcontract invoices. That's why we really have to start at the beginning to educate our PIs when we do our initial kickoff meetings, let them know that, hey, you're responsible to monitor these sub-recipients, that you're getting the deliverables that you need for this project and those types of things. Death by the PowerPoint education. I love it. So basically, yeah, we want to make sure that we get that reporting in hand, but we shouldn't even be at this point, right? All right, hair pulling and then see. I love it.
We had some great comments there. So if I were taking notes, it probably looks something like this. I just need doodles. But in summary, that we've just given a broad introduction to audits. We wanted to go through some real scenarios, some real things to think about, try to sprinkle in some humor where we could. But this is a big topic to cover. So really just think of this as a lighthearted introduction. And so now that we have everybody's anxiety high of maybe what you shouldn't do, we're going to think about calming down. And yes, I have small kids, and I totally stole this from what I always tell them, count down to calm down. So we're going to go through the 5 things you now know, 4 things to look out for, 3 resources to utilize, 2 additional trainings, and 1 takeaway. And so collective deep breath. Yep. Deep breath happens now. So 5 things you now know, besides Lisa being incredibly positive and funny, and I watched entirely too much TV as a kid. We should know some different types of audits, what an auditor might review, how your daily work might be involved in some of these audit issues or scenarios, the importance of keeping records and doing your due diligence to monitor and review when it's applicable to your job and to ask questions.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Where's my mouse at?
So 4 things and 4 reasons that we all have jobs are that these areas take specialized knowledge and they just take time to monitor. So we wanted to highlight 4 well-known categories of audit issues. So the travel that we talked about, salary and effort, subrecipient monitoring, and we didn't technically talk about cost transfers, though it's a pretty well-known area, honestly. Finding a picture that communicated recharge center was a little draining. So
yeah, the main point we want to get across is that, you know, we know that audits are going to happen, whether it be internal, external, sponsor driven, they're going to happen. Our point was, and this came from feedback from, you know, another other trainings, that this was something that wanted to be highlighted, so we wanted to cover it, but we also wanted to mainly take some of the anxiety out of it as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, you know, be comfortable in your own knowledge that you know some of this. Many of you answered all those right on track in our polls. So 3 resources: know your institutional policies and procedures, your agency guidelines and policies, and of course, ding, 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 the Code of Federal Regulations. And I mentioned this earlier that I became more familiar at catching the issues once I started studying for my CRA. And I felt like I knew those CFRs inside and out for uniform guidance. So it does make a difference when you sit down and actually study this stuff.
I had someone in the chat say participant support costs also a doozy. That's true.
Yes.
That's definitely one to be mindful of.
So 2 additional trainings that maybe get a little bit more meaty into this topic. One is even an NCURA traveling workshop on the topic of audits. So we'll have the slides available and we'll have these direct links to the second. The next one Lisa found, and it's really interesting. This is from the Institute of Internal Auditors. And so this would really be, I think, eye-opening. If you were to deal with audits regularly, this could be really interesting knowledge to see what are they looking at and why. So kind of looking at things from 2 different sides, if you're more interested in.
Yeah, I liked what I saw out there. I'll go out there and spend more time, but I think it really captures, kind of like for us, the uniform guidance, what we follow, but they also have their standards out there as well, and how it drills down into the work that they do daily.
And if I do 2 additional things, you know, conferences are often going to have a topic related to audits. Our PEDC roundup may also have conversations about audits. So there's other places to look. Those were just 2.
And if you know of any, because of your background or anything that you've gone through, drop it in the chat. We'd appreciate it. We can share those notes later. I'm gonna save that. Well, moderator should be able to save the chat.
All right, so we have one last thing for that one deep breath. And what it is that we want to hear from you. What's something that you've thought about your work in relation to audits in this presentation? Is there something that you learned? Is there something you think you might do a little differently? Am I going to be infamous forever because of my little intro song? But no, we really do want it about audits. But just give us a little bit in the chat of what's your takeaway from today.
Be mindful of when documenting of why you did and what you did. So hard to recall that years later. Exactly. Yes, humor makes audits better. Question when needed. I think rap should be incorporated in all future audit discussions. Audits can be hilarious. That's so true. I love it.
All right, if you want to keep going to the next slide, we'll keep watching for any comments that come through.
You got to keep me on the task, Tracy. Thank you. I'll be here until the end of midnight watching your comments. You guys will be gone, but I'll still be here watching them come in.
At the end of the day, we appreciate you joining us today and letting us attempt to make the topic enjoyable, in whatever degree you want to say is enjoyable. But we're interested now in hearing if there's any questions of things that we didn't cover.
Yeah, you could take yourself on mute if there's any questions, and we'll do the best we can to answer. If we can't answer them here, we'll get back to you.
Or we'll tell a great joke.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to know, I put in the chat as well, best practices for newbies on learning all of these policies. It can feel a bit overwhelming. So just what helped you when you were just starting out?
Oh, I think for me, I actually had some really good counterparts at the institution, and I really leaned on them to help give me some guidance from our central administration office. And I think typically everybody's open. We all share resources. That's why we're here today, because you have, I don't know how many people's in this room here, in this chat, and this Zoom, but everybody is willing to reach out and help one another. So for me, it wasn't a matter of going and reading like everything at one time. Obviously, there's, again, those resources we gave you at the end, that's a starting point. But right now, because we have the internet is exploding, we have so many resources out there. It's just a matter of even Googling and looking at other institutions. If your own institution doesn't have a wealth of information on audits, you can look at another institution that's a part of the partnership to see what resource they have out there. But I think mentoring and being involved with other research administrators and having those conversations, like, just on a day-to-day basis, is enough to give you keep you grounded. Okay, because it can be overwhelming. And you can ask, have you been through an audit? If you have, what was that like? And get their perspective on that. But at the end of the day, you want to just take it piecemeal. Don't you're not gonna get it all at once. So that's I love having the conversation. Whenever you get to a conference or get to a meeting such as this, and we're available. At the end of this, we give you our contact information. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, did you want to add anything?
I think I'm just such a ask a why person, right? And if you don't immediately feel like you feel confident in why something happened or what, then you can start digging into the policies, procedures, rules, and feeling confident in what you're seeing. Pretty general. Mentorship.
But the main thing is to follow your institutional policies. That's the main thing, because they're supposed to be based on, the internal controls and based on what the auditors are expecting to see. So as long as you're looking at your institutional policies when it comes to these expenditures, I mean, because basically it's all expense driven. How was the expense looked at? How was it justified? How was it explained? Was it reasonable? You know, was it even allowed on the grant? You know, if we follow those 4 standards, then we're usually going to be in good shape.
Okay, thank you, ladies.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Feel free to put it in the chat too if you don't want to unmute yourself.
We hope you enjoyed our session today. And, you know, if nothing else, go out there and make jokes and laugh in the face of adversity.
My email is out there
it's a
for
good
record
one.
deals.
I always get me if I'm having a stressed out day, I'll go look me up a video, a comedy video, and get to laughing, and then I just changes my whole perspective on things. So laughter and humor is a good, really a good way to deal with everyday situations. All right, well, take care. We hope you all have a great day.
Thank you,
Please,
Lisa. Thank
please
you,
take the
Tracy.
survey. Please take the survey. It should have been a link in the right up above there, feedback survey. If you don't see that, we're going to stay on for a minute so you can click that link.
And Lisa, you can go to the last slide too that shows upcoming additional.
Oh yeah.
We've got the roundup on April 9th coming up for the region. Yeah. So for anybody that's still on, share with the others that have already logged off.
Yeah. What was that, Catherine?
I think we'll get an announcement for that one out next week. My question is, can I see Tracy rap again in the future?
I'm not doing it live. That's for sure.
I was gonna say, does that come with the PowerPoint slides, the copy of the rap?
I can do that.
Might have to.
That was 3 a.m. I had like the thought came and I wrote it down and I showed it to Lisa. She's like, you have to do it. So
yeah, I was like, there's no way you're not gonna do that. That's just amazing. It was just like it just like I said, it reminded me of this no cost extension, sole source no cost extension where they entertain us. But now we got the the hip hop spin on it. I loved it.
Yeah, it was really good. And what better way to help, set in those reminders in your head than to sing the song?
Yeah.
It set the tone.
It did. Yeah, great. It was great.
Yeah.